My name is Evan. I'm 28 years old. After my divorce, I moved to a small town named Chatham in Alabama. Apart from my parents' house, I didn't really have anywhere else to go, so I came to live in my grandfather's old house. He passed away a few years ago and left the place to us. It's about 10 minutes outside town, sitting on 10 acres surrounded by woods. It's real quiet out there. I thought I'd enjoy that. The house is old, with floors that creak, doors that stick, the kind of place that always feels a little cold no matter how high the thermostat is. But it was free and I didn't have a better option. The first few nights were normal. I unpacked and cleaned. I spent the evening sitting on the porch with a beer. It was peaceful. No traffic, just the wind through the trees and the occasional owl. But then the noises started. The first time I heard it was on the 7th night. I've had just gotten into bed around midnight. I was almost asleep when I heard whistling. Outside, it wasn't a song I recognized, just a slow, broken tune. Off key, it sounded like someone walking through the woods behind the house, whistling as they went. It creeped me out, but I figured it was some hunter or drunk neighbor. The next night it happened again. Same time, same tune, but this time it sounded closer. I got out of bed and turned on the porch light, but I didn't see anyone. I went outside with a flashlight and checked around the yard. Nothing. No tracks. No sound of someone running off. Just the whistling fading deeper into the woods. I tried to ignore it for a couple of nights. I just stayed in bed and tried to sleep through it. But every time the whistling would start around 1:17 a.m. I know that sounds like a random number, but I swear it was always around 115 or 119 somewhere. There, it was like clockwork. I started thinking maybe someone was messing with me on purpose, someone who knew I was out there alone. I called the sheriff's office a few days later. An old deputy, who I'll call Deputy H, came out. He'd been in the job a long time. When I told him what was happening, he got real quiet. He said word for word, "Your granddaddy used to call us about the same thing. Said someone was whistling around the property late at night, always in the spring. We never found anything. I figured he was just getting old. But now you're hearing it, too." That shook me. I had no idea my grandfather dealt with this. Deputy H told me to keep the doors locked and stay inside after dark. I started doing that, not like I wasn't already. I double-checked every window. One night, I even put chairs under the door knobs, but the whistling kept coming closer. Every night. One night, I heard it behind the shed. It was louder than usual, like the person was standing right outside. I grabbed my flashlight and looked through the blinds. I didn't see anyone, but I didn't dare go outside. The next night, I heard it from the front porch, right by the door. 3 long whistles, then silence. The night after that, it came from under the floorboards. I swear to God, it was like someone was in the crawl space, whistling up through the vents. I didn't sleep at all that night. I started digging through the attic the next day, trying to find anything my grandfather left behind. I found a box of his journals. He wrote about the whistling. He said it happened every spring for over 10 years. He didn't know who it was, but he thought it was someone watching the house. He said he used to sit up with a rifle by the front door just in case. He said it only ever happened when he lived alone after my grandmother died. I called Deputy H. Again, he came by and read the journal, and he looked nervous. He told me to be careful. He said, "Don't open the door if you don't know who it is." That night, I stayed up. I sat on the couch with a shotgun across my lap. A shotgun I barely knew how to load. I waited. At 1:17 a.m., the whistling started again, but this time it didn't come from outside. It came from the hallway inside the house. I froze. The hallway light was off. I could hear the whistling moving closer step by step. I stood up, aimed the shotgun, and shouted, "Who's there?" The whistling stopped. I flipped the hallway light on. Nothing was there. No one. I didn't sleep again after that. It was 2 nights since then, and I hadn't heard it. Again, I was getting sick. I didn't know who this person was. I didn't know why. They picked me or my grandfather, but it was real, and I knew it was. I don't believe in hallucinations to that degree, nor do I believe in anything paranormal. This was a real person. After that night, things went quiet for 2 days. No sounds, no movement, no sign of anything. I thought maybe it was finally over. On the 3rd night, I went to bed just after midnight. I didn't stay up this time. I left the hallway, light on just in case. At exactly 1:17 a.m., I woke up to a new sound, not whistling, knocking, slow, paced-out knocks. 3 of them. They were coming from inside the house, from the back door. Then silence. I didn't move. I stayed in bed, listening. A minute later, I heard a new sound, a creak from the floorboard in the hallway. Then another. Someone was walking. The hallway light went out. I grabbed my shotgun, heart pounding, and stepped out of the bedroom. The hallway was dark, but at the end of it I saw something. A person wearing black clothes, pale face. They were standing perfectly still, just watching me. I raised the shotgun, but my hands were shaking. I tried to speak, but my mouth was dry. I raised the shotgun, but my hands were shaking. I screamed, "Don't move," with my shaky voice. I saw in the dark the person slowly start lifting their leg and turning as if they were about to run. I screamed, "Stop!" And at that moment, they darted out of the hallway, out of my line of sight. I heard their surprisingly heavy footsteps stomping out the front door into the dark. I ran outside and fired a shot, not into the air, but straight ahead into the darkness, low-key hoping I'd hit him in the dark. I screamed, "Don't come back." The shot hurt my ears, ricocheting off the walls of the house and the deck. I locked up the house, got to my truck, and drove into town. I slept in my truck. That night, the next morning, Deputy H drove out there and the front door to the house was unlocked again. That confirmed whoever that person was had a key to my grandfather's house. Nothing was broken or missing, but Deputy H recommended I change the locks. And he, also off the record, suggested I move out of that old place because someone out in those woods hasn't taken kindly to either my grandfather or myself being in that house. I drove out to the local home improvement store and switched the locks that day, that same hour. After that, I left that house to go to my parents' house out of state for a while. I left it to my dad to eventually sell that house, anything of sentimental value we took out, and the rest was just left in there or sold. My father, of course, left out the fact that there's some creep who's been stalking the house for apparently decades now. How they potentially got a key, who they were, why my grandfather never said anything, I don't know. It all disturbs me deeply. I personally think it was some disturbed creep living in a nearby house. I eventually moved to a more urban area. This experience left me honestly too unsettled to live in a remote location. I'm 16 and live in the city. Now, but I spent the first 8 years of my life in the countryside. For some people, it might seem weird as I was allowed from a very young age to walk around a small village without being supervised by my parents. The area itself wasn't very big, and the entire population was about 90 people, maximum. Basically, everyone knew everyone, to the point that me and my friends remember the car numbers and whom they belonged to. It was a hot summer day. My friend and I, who I'll call Julian, were dead thirsty for some Coca-Cola. Back then, soda was very cheap at those little supermarkets, and we really needed a couple of pennies to get the right amount of money to buy 2 cans. Luckily, an old woman called us from her house. She explained that she was going to make some mint tea for everyone since her birthday was coming up. The issue was she ran out of mint plants, so she told us that if we'd fill 2 plastic bags with mint leaves, she would buy us as much soda as we wanted. Julian and I thought it was a great idea, since I didn't want to ask my parents for any money. Soon later that day, we started digging. The sun was literally frying our foreheads, and our clothes were soaked in sweat. We searched for mints, but despite our efforts, we barely filled half of the first plastic bag. Both of us were very mad, since we knew there was no way we would actually manage to gather enough leaves before the sun went down. Still, we kept walking and looking around, hoping that some miracle would happen and we would find a field full of plants. Suddenly, 2 tall guys approached us completely out of nowhere. And when I say tall, they were probably like 5 feet 7 inches. Yet they seemed like giants to our 7-year-old selves. And what surprised me the most was that they were both covered in black clothes with large hoodies and tight pants. None of them looked older than 17, despite being very hard to make out their facial features. They talked to us in a very friendly, childish voice, their words carefully chosen to not raise any suspicion. "Are you kids both alone?" Julian looked at me. He seemed a little worried and made a hand gesture that signed to leave. Unfortunately, body language was never my cup of tea, so I didn't understand what he wanted us to do. I shifted my attention back to the 2 guys and spoke in a rather cheerful voice, saying, "Yeah, we're actually looking for some mint plants." And then asked where we could find a bunch of those we've been looking for so long, and we're really tired. Now, I'm not really sure, but I have a short flashback of one of the 2 guys smirking when they heard what we were looking for. One of them crouched next to me and patted my head. Julian quickly came close to me, pulling me back by the arm a little when he saw the guy touching me. His expression was serious, almost a little panicked, and he asked, "Who are your parents?" You see, from where I come from, that question requested the answer to be by last name. Since there were so few people, not many new generations were born, so asking who your parents were was a common way to identify the entire bloodline of the person. Julian was born in the countryside, so he knew the people much better than me. I assume he was scared because he didn't recognize the 2 guys, and the fact that they were talking to 2 small kids without anyone around and even patting my head instantly sent a red flag to him. Just as he feared, they avoided question, looking like I was their main interest. Actually, I've seen a big field of mints. You see that hill over there? That's where we come from. If you want, we could lead you to the field and help you fill those bags, or even more. Of course, we knew that hill. Julian and I and the other kids would play hide and seek in its forest at night, and it was such fun I can't even describe it. But still, not once have I ever seen any sort of mint field. After all, the only things that grew there were corn, grapes, and some watermelons. Again, I was a very idiotic kid, and all of those red flags meant nothing serious. To me, I nodded eagerly, pulling Julian by the arm to come with me. The guys seemed satisfied and began to lead the way. We were walking further and further away from the village, and I could feel my friend's hand tremble in mine. At that point, I felt a sudden shiver down my spine as the village was now completely nowhere to be seen. The forest was right in front of us, and I could see that there was no trace of any field of mint. I tried asking the guys where we were going, but they gave very vague answers like, "You'll see," or "Just be patient." I began to sweat and slowed my steps a little. Panic was rushing through my veins, and I quickly realized something bad was going to happen, but for some reason, I couldn't stop walking. I knew for sure that if either of us tried to step back, something really, really bad would happen. Then very discreetly, Julian came close to my ear, and I still get chills remembering this so vividly. He whispered as silently as he could, "There's something wrong with these two. Run." That was the last thing I heard when Julian began sprinting downhill like crazy, his hand not breaking contact with mine for a single second. I was running as if my life depended on it, and it probably did, actually. I could hear the two guys curse, and eventually they started chasing us from behind. I started crying loudly with fear, not stopping my tracks. I'm sure I wasn't even breathing, and I can't understand how in the world I ran for almost 2 kilometers back into the village without a break or a breath. The woman who asked us to look for the mint saw us, both full of tears and sweat. Our faces were pale as if all the blood left our bodies in that very moment. At some point as we got closer to the village, those guys must have stopped following us. She calmly took us inside and gave us some chocolate to feel better. She asked what had happened, and Julian was the one to tell her, since my mouth was completely paralyzed. As soon as he finished, the woman gave us a worried look and scolded us for being so stupid. Well, scolded Julian as he lied, saying I didn't want to follow them, and he insisted on trusting the guys. After that incident, he wasn't allowed to come outside and play for a month. While I needed lots of time to recover from the small trauma, I never found out who those guys were or what they wanted from us. Looking back now, much older, I can likely guess, and that doesn't sit well with me. While we were running, there was a huge chance I could have tripped and fell, since running downhill at that speed was very risky. If it wasn't for Julian, who is now my boyfriend, I don't even want to imagine what those guys would have done to us. Music. My parents used to work a lot when I was little. They both had to work 2 jobs because they needed extra support from me and my older brother Cameron. Their jobs kept us on our feet, but still required them to be gone most of the time. So they hired a babysitter for us on some website. It was a young white girl, maybe early 20s, named Michelle. For about 4 to 5 months, Michelle came over every weekday to babysit us. Me being 7 and Cam being 8, we both loved having Michelle around.
परदेशात आपल्या व्यवसायाचा विस्तार करण्यात आपण यशस्वी व्हाल. नोकरी करणाऱ्यांना कामाच्या ठिकाणी सावध राहावे लागेल. आपण जर योग्य ठिकाणी आर्थिक गुंतवणूक केलीत तर ती आपल्या हिताची होईल. या आठवड्यात खर्च वाढतील. या आठवड्यात विद्यार्थ्यांना अभ्यासाकडे लक्ष द्यावे लागेल, अन्यथा नंतर पश्चाताप करण्याची वेळ येऊ शकते. या आठवड्यात आपण कोणत्याही गोष्टीचा ताण घेऊ नये. हा आठवडा आरोग्याच्या बाबतीत काहीसा प्रतिकूल आहे. आपणास आपल्या आहारावर नियंत्रण ठेवावे लागेल, अन्यथा एखादा जुनाट आजार उफाळून येऊ शकतो. आज चंद्र 25 मे 2025 रविवारी मेष राशीत स्थित आहे. आपल्या राशीपासून चंद्र
our
अष्टमात
grandparents'
भावात
house.
असणार आहे.
They lived
आज
in
नवीन कामे
Texas
सुरू
and
केल्यास
countryside,
त्यात
which is
अडचणी
a
येतील.
little far
बाहेरचे
from our
खाद्यपदार्थ
house in
खाऊन
Oklahoma,
स्वास्थ्य
but
बिघडू
would be worth
शकते.
the drive, given
मन
we
रागीट होईल.
be there all
म्हणून
summer.
बोलण्यावर
The
ताबा
weekend
ठेवावा
came
लागेल.
around, and on Saturday,
कुटुंबियांशी
we started our
मतभेद
drive.
संभवतात.
The ride was
अपघाताची शक्यता
beautiful,
असल्याने
but obviously to
जलाशयापासून
little me,
दूर
it was the
राहावे.
most boring,
महत्वाचे निर्णय
nauseous
किंवा जोखीम
experience ever.
यापासून
We
वाचण्यासाठी
finally
वेळ,
made it to
विरासत
their house
इत्यादी
after what
अडचणी
felt
निर्माण
like
होऊ शकतात.
forever.
कष्टाचे
It was a
योग्य फळ न
medium-sized
मिळाल्याने
house.
मन
Looking
उदास
house in the
होईल.
middle of a big,
हितशत्रूंचा
open
त्रास
field and woods
संभवतो.
around the back.
गूढ व
A
रहस्यमय
little
गोष्टीत
off to the side
रुची
was
राहील.
kind of a
सातत्याने
barn-style
सकारात्मक
building
विचार
with
करण्याची
area for
प्रवृत्ती
animals
फलदायी
such as
ठरेल.
cows, goats,
तुम्हाला यश
chickens,
मिळेल.
and
आजच्या
other
दिवशी
cool stuff.
घरातील
We all
इलेक्ट्रॉनिक
said our
वस्तू
hellos,
खराब होण्याच्या
and right
कारणाने
away my grandpa
धन
wanted
खर्च
to
होऊ
take
शकते.
Cam and I
तुमच्या
on a
जवळच्या
little tour
माणसांबरोबर
around the place.
कोणताही
My
वादविवाद
parents
छेडू
stayed.
नका.
Inside,
जर वादग्रस्त
talking to
मुद्दे
my
असतील
grandma as she
तर ते
cooked dinner
परस्पर
for us.
संमतीने सोडवता
The night
येतात.
was
तुमच्या
amazing.
उपस्थितीमुळे
We got to catch
तुमच्या
up with
प्रिय
grandma
व्यक्तीचे
and
विश्व
grandpa,
स्वर्ग बनेल.
and we played a little
आपले
bit.
मत विचारल्यानंतर
Dog court.
मानताना
When
उगाच
it was
भीड
time.
बाळगू नका.
4 bed,
आपल्या
my
मताचे
brother and I
खूप
shared a
कौतुक
room
होऊ शकते.
with a bunk
आजचा
bed and a
दिवस
TV.
तुमच्या
The room
वैवाहिक
next
आयुष्यातील
door
एक
was another
उत्तम दिवस
bedroom
असले.
where my
जेव्हा
parents
तुम्ही
slept.
आपल्या
My mom
कुटुंबासोबत
and dad
सामान्यांपेक्षा
slept
जास्त वेळ
very
घालवतात
fast because they
तर
were tired
थोडे वाद
from
होऊ
the
शकतात,
drive,
परंतु
and they had to be
आज
home.
यापासून बचाव
The next day
करण्याचा
for work
प्रयत्न
on
करा.
Monday. Cam
भाग्यांकन
and I
8
stayed up a little
भाग्य
bit
रंग
longer watching
काळा
some
आणि
cartoons on
निळा.
TV.
उपाय
After a
आर्थिक
bit,
स्थितीला चांगले
we
बनवण्यासाठी
finally went to sleep with
गव्हाचे
the TV
11
on.
दाणे
Around 2
सूर्योदयाच्या वेळी
a.m.,
खा.
I was woken
धनु
up by
राशी
the sound
धनु
of
राशीच्या
footsteps
लोकांना
outside my
जून
window.
महिन्यात
Heavy
चांगल्या
footsteps.
संधी मिळू
I
शकतात.
couldn't see what was
गुरुची सत्तम
out
दृष्टी
there
तुमच्या
because the window
राशीवर
had
पडू
blinds
शकते,
over them.
ज्यामुळे
The
शनीच्या
footsteps
धिया
did wake
असूनही
up.
लाभ होऊ
Cam
शकतो.
because the TV was still
कुटुंबात
playing,
मंगल कार्य
but
होऊ
I could
शकते.
still hear them.
धार्मिक
I
यात्रा
then
देखील
heard
होण्याची
a
शक्यता
weird
आहे.
noise coming from the
रिअल इस्टेट
window,
मधून
and
नफा
after 2
शक्य आहे.
seconds, I heard
तथापि
a
यश
grunt.
मिळविण्यासाठी
Someone was trying to
तुम्हाला
open
थोडे अधिक प्रयत्न
I
करावे लागू
went to my
शकतात.
parents' room
तुमच्या
to wake
चंद्र
them up
राशीपासून
and tell them
केतूच्या
they
9व्या
didn't
भावात
really
असण्याच्या
believe me
वेळी
and
जर
thought it
तुम्ही
was my
मांसाहार करतात तर
imagination, of
या
course.
सावताहेत
But
तुम्हाला
when they
कमजोरीच्या
went to
समस्येने
check, nothing
आराम
was
मिळू
there.
शकेल. तथापि
So they
यासाठी
just
उत्तम
brushed it
हेच
off as
असेल
an animal.
की
Sound.
बाहेरील जेवण
We were in the
मागवण्याच्या
middle of
ऐवजी
nowhere.
घरातच
After
बनवलेले
all,
जेवण करा
and maybe
आणि
my
जेवण
kid brain
पचवण्यासाठी
really did
नियमित
think it was
30
something
मिनिटे
it wasn't.
वॉकिंग करा.
I
जर तुम्ही
fell back
सरकारी
asleep
क्षेत्रात काम
after 5
करताना
minutes
दिसत
of
आहे
just
तर हा
laying there.
सप्ताह
In the morning,
तुमच्यासाठी
I woke up to the
महत्त्वपूर्ण आणि
delicious smell
उत्तम
of my
राहणार आहे,
grandma
कारण
cooking
यावेळी
breakfast as my
तुम्हाला
parents
सरकारकडून लाभ आणि
packing to go
पुरस्कार
home.
मिळण्याची
We
शक्यता
all ate
कायम राहील.
together. Then my
यामुळे
parents were off.
तुम्हाला उत्तम
Once
स्तरावर
they
नखा मिळेल.
left, my grandpa
जेव्हा या
took Cam, I
सप्ताहात
had to go.
गरज पडल्यास
Feed
जेव्हा
the
तुम्हाला
animals while
एकटे
taking
वाटेल
Cora on a
त्यावेळी आपले
walk.
मातापिता
I wanted to have Cora's
तुम्हाला
lead.
आशीर्वाद देऊन
So,
आपले
my
मनोबल
grandpa
वाढवण्याचे
handed it to
कार्य
me,
करतील.
saying to
यामुळे
hold
तुमचे
on tight.
कौटुंबिक जीवन
As we were
सुचारू
walking
चालत
along
राहील.
the trail,
यामुळे तुमच्या
I found myself
कार्यस्थळी
having to pull
तुमची प्रतिष्ठा
Cora a
अधिक
little bit
वाढेल
every
आणि
5
तुम्ही
seconds.
आपली मेहनत
When
आणि
I finally
कार्यक्षमतेच्या
looked to see
बळावर
why she wasn't
प्रत्येक विपरीत
walking,
परिस्थितीलाही
I saw
आपल्या
her
पक्षात
staring at
करण्यात
something. She was
यशस्वी
staring in
होऊन
the woods.
निरंतर
I was
यशाकडे
a
जाताना
little
दिसतील.
scared to
या
look in
काळात
the
आयटी
direction. But when I
इंजिनिअरिंग
did,
इत्यादींचा
I saw a
अभ्यास
black
करणाऱ्या
man
विद्यार्थ्यांना
standing there
कमी
staring
मेहनती
at us.
नंतर
Even
उत्तम
though it
परिणाम
was
मिळतील,
all
कारण
black,
योग
I
बनत आहेत
could tell he was
की
looking
या
at us.
काळात तुम्ही
He was
जीही परीक्षा
half
द्याल
behind a
त्यात
tree
तुम्हाला
with his
उत्तम
hands on
अंक
the
प्राप्त करून
wood as if he were trying
आपल्या
to peek
प्रतिभेचे
over,
प्रदर्शन करण्याची
but
संधी
his
मिळेल.
whole body.
हा
I turned
आठवडा
to my
आपणास चांगला
grandpa
असण्याची
to tell him,
संभावना
but him
आहे.
and Cam,
व्यापाऱ्यांसाठी
already like
आठवडा
15
अत्यंत
feet
चांगला
ahead of
आहे.
me.
त्यांना
I ran
व्यापारातून
to catch up
चांगला
with them
फायदा होईल.
while having
नोकरी
to pull
करणाऱ्यांसाठी
Cora a little bit.
आठवडा
But once
अनुकूल
I
आहे.
told
मात्र
my grandpa about
पदोन्नती
man
मिळविण्याच्या नादात कामात
woods,
कोणत्याही
man
प्रकारे
vanished.
गडबड होणार
It was
नाही
like he
ह्याची
was never
काळजी
even
घ्यावी
there.
लागेल.
I thought I
अशी
would
काळजी घेतल्यास
have been able to
वरिष्ठ
see him
आपल्यावर
if he
प्रसन्न
ran
होतील.
off. But where could
विद्यार्थ्यांनी
he have gone?
अभ्यासाच्या
My
बाबतीत
grandpa heard about
सतर्क
what
राहावे.
happened the
इतर
night
प्रवृत्तीत
before,
वेळ
so we
जोडल्यास
telling him.
त्याचा
Something
प्रतिकूल
like that
परिणाम
couldn't be me,
आपल्या अभ्यासावर
playing
होऊ
tricks on
शकतो.
them. I could
या
tell in
आठवड्यात
his face
कोणताही
that he was
निर्णय
concerned,
घाईघाईत
but he
घेऊ नये.
just told me
या
that it was
आठवड्यात
okay and
आपल्या
that
व्यक्तिगत
it was probably a
जीवनातील
deer in
काही
the distance.
समस्यांची समस्यांचे
And that when I
प्रायश्चित
ran,
घ्यावे
I
लागेल.
scared it off.
ज्या व्यक्ती
After we fed
नोकरीच्या
the
शोधात
animals, we
आहेत
went back
त्यांना
to their
एखादी
house.
चांगली नोकरी
We
मिळू
enjoyed
शकते.
the rest of it.
काही
The day
गैरसमज झाल्याने
watching movies and
प्रणयी
playing.
नात्यात
Outside and
समस्या
sprinkled.
निर्माण होऊ शकते.
That night,
विवाहितांना
my grandma made the
त्यांच्या
best dinner.
जोडीदाराशी
Two,
कौटुंबिक
there was a lot
विषयांवर
of food.
चर्चा करावी
So
लागेल.
after
त्यामुळे
eating, I
घरातील
was really
वातावरण
tired.
सकारात्मक
I
होऊ
took
शकेल.
A. quick
आज
10-minute
चंद्र
bath
25 मे
headed right to
2025 रविवारी मेष
We
राशीत स्थित
watched
आहे.
cartoons for a
आपल्या
bit and
राशीपासून
fell asleep.
चंद्र 5व्या
Around 1
भावात
a.m.
असणार आहे.
I was woken
आज
up by the
कार्यपूर्ती न
sound of
झाल्याने
humming outside
नैराश्य येण्याची
window.
शक्यता आहे.
It was humming to the
रागावर
theme song
नियंत्रण ठेवावे
of
लागेल.
Cyber Chase,
संतती
the show that
विषयक
was
बाबींमुळे
playing.
चिंता वाढते.
Cam,
शक्यतो
being a heavy
आज
sleeper,
प्रवास टाळावे.
was
तुमच्या
did wake up to
आरोग्याच्या
it,
सुधारणेसाठी
and as I said
पुन्हा
earlier,
पहिल्यापासून
the blinds were
प्रयत्न
over
सुरू
the
करण्यासाठी
window,
चांगला
so I
दिवस
couldn't see
आहे.
what was.
आज
But I
अनुभवी
knew for sure
आणि
at this
नाविन्यपूर्ण
point
कल्पना
to be a
असलेल्या
person.
लोकांच्या
At
सल्ल्यानुसार
first, I thought
पैसे
it
गुंतवा.
was my grandpa
आज
outside
यशाचे
smoking.
हेच समीकरण
And for
उपयोगी
some
ठरेल.
reason, he
अडचणीच्या
started
प्रसंगी
humming the
तुमचे
intro
कुटुंब
'cause he heard it through
तुमच्या
the
बचावासाठी
window.
धावून
Of
येतील
course,
आणि
that was
तुम्हाला
dumb.
मार्गदर्शन करतील.
Explanation. But me
इतरांचे
being the
वागणे
kid I
पाहून
was, I
त्यातून
yelled out,
तुम्हाला
"Grandpa."
काही धडा शिकता येईल.
The humming stopped.
आत्मविश्वास
After
मजबूत
30
करणे हे
seconds of no
कमालीचे
sound,
मदतगार
I then
ठरू
heard,
शकते.
"Hey,
अतिमधुर
it's
सुंदर
Grandpa.
आवाजाच्या
Come
व्यक्तीशी
out here,
भेट
kid.
होण्याची
I want
खूप दाट
to show
शक्यता
you
आहे.
something cool."
रिकाम्या वेळेचा
I
आज
then
तुम्ही सदुपयोग
proceeded to
कराल
put on my
आणि त्या
shoes
कामांना
and went.
पूर्ण करण्याचा
Outside,
प्रयत्न कराल
there were no lights,
जे काम
but I
तुम्ही मागील
remember how
दिवसात करू
beautiful
शकले
the night
नव्हते.
sky.
तुमच्या
Look,
वैवाहिक
I finally
आयुष्यातील
got to my window
हा
where
एक उत्तम
I
दिवस
saw my
असेल.
grandpa
तुम्ही
standing.
तुमच्या
He
जोडीदारावर
reached out
किती
his
प्रेम
hand for
करता
me to grab it.
हे व्यक्त
I
करा.
took
आज
his
तुमच्या
hand
उत्तम
and he
अंदाजाने
started leading me
तुमचे
toward
सहकर्मी
the barn.
तुमच्याशी
I tried
आकर्षित
talking
होऊ
to
शकतात.
him,
भाग्यांक
asking where we were going, but
एक
no
भाग्यरंग
answer. I started to
नारंगी
rethink
आणि सोनेरी
what was
उपाय
happening. Why
सोन्याची
would my
अंगठी
grandpa be
मंगळ यंत्र
outside at
खोदून
1
घालणे
a.m. showing me
आरोग्यासाठी
something
शुभ
cool?
असेल.
Why was he
कुंभ
wearing
राशी
a
कुंभ
sweater
राशीच्या
with a hood up?
लोकांसाठी
Then I looked
हा महिना
at my
संघर्ष
grandpa's hand
आणि यशाचा
and really
संमिश्र
paid
काळ असेल.
attention to it,
मंगळ आणि
only
केतूची
to
सप्तमी
realize
दृष्टी
it
असूनही
was my grandpa's
गुरुची
hand.
9वी दृष्टी
It
भाग्याला
was the
अनुकूल राहील.
hand of someone
विलंबित
much younger.
कामांना गती
I
मिळेल
tried to
आणि
pull
कामाच्या
my hand
ठिकाणी
away,
सहकार्य
but his
मिळेल.
grip only got
उत्पन्नाचे स्रोत वाढतील,
stronger. I
परंतु
didn't want to let
काही
him
शुभ
know.
कार्यांवर
I knew
खर्च
something was
देखील
wrong,
होऊ
so
शकतो.
I stayed
समजूतदार
quiet,
निर्णय घ्या.
even though my heart
फायदे
was
निश्चित आहेत.
pounding.
या
Then I
सप्ताहात
looked behind
तुम्ही
me.
समाजातील बऱ्याच
Noticed
मोठ्या
a long hand
लोकांसोबत
was
भेट
sticking
करण्यासाठी
out the back of his
अतिरिक्त
pants.
प्रयत्न आणि
That's when I
ऊर्जेचा वापर
really
करताना
panicked
दिसाल,
inside.
परंतु
Suddenly
यावेळी
I
तुम्हाला
heard
हे
my
समजण्याची
grandpa's voice
आवश्यकता आहे की
the house.
सामाजिक
I didn't
गोष्टी
say anything
वाढण्यापेक्षा
back, but the man
तुमच्यासाठी
turned his
आपल्या
head toward
आरोग्याला
the
प्राथमिकता
sound.
देण्याची
In that
आवश्यकता
moment
आहे
of
म्हणून
distraction,
आपल्या
I
ऊर्जेचा
yanked
बचाव
my
करून
hand free
त्याला
and started
आपल्या
back.
आरोग्याच्या सुधारणेसाठी वापर
The
करा.
man stood there
तुमच्या
for a
चंद्र
second,
राशीपासून
then suddenly bolted
शनीच्या
toward the
दुसऱ्या
woods.
भावात असण्याच्या कारणाने
I
हा
ran straight
सप्ताह
to the
आर्थिक
house,
जीवनाच्या
yelling
बाबतीत
forward.
उत्तम
Hell,
राहणार आहे.
by the time I got
तथापि
inside, my
वाहन चालवणाऱ्या
grandpa was
जातकांना ते
waiting for me
चालवण्याच्या
with his
वेळी
arms
थोडी
wide
अधिक
open,
सावधानी
and my
ठेवण्याची
grandma had the
आवश्यकता
phone
आहे,
to
कारण
hurry talking to the police. Not long after, the cops showed up and started searching the area. They found the man hiding in a ditch not far from the house. In that ditch was some stuff he'd taken from the barn, and most disturbingly of all, they said he had an axe tucked in the back of his pants. After further investigation, they found that the lock on my grandpa's shed had been broken off, leaving it open for anyone to get anything they pleased. In the shed were a lot of tools that could have caused more trouble. After a couple of days, my grandpa found out that man turned out to be Michelle's ex-boyfriend, who I'll just call Dave. Dave admitted to have been stalking us and planned to take me that night. He figured it was easy to take a little girl, so he went after me. He said he wanted to take me because he knew Michelle cared about me a lot, and if he had threatened to hurt me, he could make Michelle do anything. Dave stated he mainly wanted to use me to get back with Michelle because he wanted to start over and live a happy life with her. He claimed he was never actually going to hurt me. After this whole incident, our parents picked Cam and I up a week later and started looking for better jobs so they could be home with us more often. They also let Michelle go, which is understandable. I'm so grateful that the police station wasn't that far from my grandparents' house. But most importantly, I'm thankful my grandpa had woken up that night to use the bathroom. Even after 20 years, it still gives me chills to think about what would have happened to me that night